Whilst World Cup qualification is vast and long, there is perhaps no harder continent to qualify from than Africa. There are 54 teams spread across vastly different geographical terrains, not to mention a selection of teams in the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Senegal, Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, Tunisia, Kenya, Nigeria and even Burkina Faso, who could give any team in the world a game. Yet there are only 5 places available. And so the opening round of qualification featured some of the poorest and most troubled countries on the continent. South Sudan, the world's youngest country and national team, made its World Cup debut as the country was sinking further into civil war. Sierra Leone had to play its games in Nigeria due to the Ebola outbreak. Somalia again had to play its games in exile due to instability in the country, and Eritrea once again lost half of its team after playing Botswana. The Red Sea Boys had lost their first round tie against the Zebras, but that was not to be the end of the story. Eritrea is one of the least free countries on earth with zero democracy, free speech and perpetual national service. Travelling is virtually banned, meaning that one of the few options to leave the country is offered by competing for Eritrea in sports. Over the past 10 years, Eritrea has seen close to 100 footballers flee the country whilst on international duty. After losing their first round of 2014 World Cup matches against Rwanda, half of that national team later fled and eventually settled in Holland. The same happened in Botswana. After the defeat, 10 Eritrean players absconded and claimed political asylum. On the pitch, Africa's big teams were given a scare in the knockout phase, with Egypt, Tunisia and Nigeria all having to dig deep to see off spirited performances by Chad, Mauritania and Swaziland. But the toughest stage was the final group stage, where only the top teams qualified. There was no prize for second place. Morocco, under the guidance of Frenchman Hervé Renard, who won the Africa Cup of Nations with both Zambia and the Ivory Coast, qualified with style for their first finals since 1998 without conceding a goal. The two played each other in a tense final game in Abidjan. Morocco would win 2-0 and eliminate Ivory Coast in the process. Nigeria would qualify unbeaten from the group of death that included Cameroon and Zambia. Algeria, so promising at Brazil 2014, came bottom of the group. Tunisia also went unbeaten as they made their first finals since 2006. Senegal had not qualified for a World Cup since the days of El Hadj Diouf, when they famously beat the holders France in the opening game of the 2002 World Cup. And it didn't look like it was going well this time when South Africa beat them 2-1 in Polokwane. But the match result was later annulled due to a suspected match manipulation by Ghanaian referee Joseph Lamptey. Lamptey was banned from football for life by FIFA. The match was replayed and Senegal snatched top spot, and with it, their second ever World Cup qualification. But the story of the round could be found in Egypt. Despite being arguably the best team in Africa for much of the past 2 decades, winning 3 Africa Cup of Nations in a row, the Pharaohs had failed to qualify for a World Cup since Italia '90. The team came agonisingly close to reaching Brazil under the tutelage of former US coach Bob Bradley. With the country in the middle of a revolution and then counter-revolution, and with the supporters banned from most games, Egypt reached the playoffs after winning every group game, only to fall apart and lose 6-1 to Ghana in Kumasi. 4 years later, under Hector Cuper, Egypt again started strongly until the crunch game against Congo, in Alexandria's huge Burj Al Arab stadium. The fans were allowed to return and over 80,000 supporters watched as Congo equalised in the 88th minute. But in the 6th minute of injury time, Egypt won a penalty. Up stepped Liverpool forward Mohamed Salah. In one of the most iconic moments of qualification, Salah scored with the last kick of the game, sparking pandemonium in the stadium and around the country. Finally, the Pharaohs would grace another World Cup finals. South American qualification doesn't lend itself to the minnows. Every team on the continent plays each other in a league format, and every team except for Venezuela has qualified at least once for the finals. Venezuela would not be able to repeat its heroics from 4 years previously when it came close to reaching the playoff, largely due to the chaos caused by the country's economic and social collapse. But the quality of qualification didn't mean it was easy street for the continent's biggest teams. Argentina struggled throughout qualification, losing its first game against Ecuador. For a while, it looked like Messi's Argentina might even miss out on a playoff. Colombia, many people's dark horse pick for Brazil 2014, also started slowly, as did continental champions Chile. Whilst Brazil coasted to Russia 2018 and Uruguay joined them before the end of qualification, any one of the 5 teams were in with a shout of making either one of the 2 remaining automatic qualification places and the 1 playoff spot. Matchday 18 was chaos. Paraguay missed out after somehow losing to an already eliminated Venezuela at home 1-0. Brazil easily dispensed Chile, leaving Chile at the mercy of results elsewhere. Argentina had to win against Ecuador, but amazingly went 1-0 down in the first minute of the game. A loss would almost certainly see them eliminated. But after years of never quite clicking with his national team and even being booed by their fans, Lionel Messi finally produced. His hat-trick saw Argentina come back to win 3-1 and make it to Russia. That left Peru versus Colombia. If Peru lost, Chile was home and dry. A draw would see Colombia qualify and Peru in the playoff spot on goal difference. A Colombia goal scored by James Rodriguez early in the second half in Lima gave Chile hope, but then controversy. In the 77th minute, Peru won an indirect free kick outside the box. Paulo Guerrero decided to strike the ball at the goal anyway, which Arsenal goalkeeper David Ospina punched as it went in. If Ospina had not touched the ball, the goal would have been chalked off, and if the score stayed 1-0, Chile would have been on the flight to Russia. But as Ospina touched it, it stood and went down as an own goal. Peru was in the playoff places, beating Chile on goal difference. A month later in Lima, Peru dispatched New Zealand in the playoff and qualified for their first finals since 1982.